I really want you to take a moment to think about how powerful that is, to be able to actually save money and make long-term goals. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Paper Favors YouTube channel. I'm accompanied by my book. He's always there, you know, so if you want to get him, that is fine. I hope you enjoyed the video so far. Yeah, we've been talking about bartering and really what is money. Okay, so what did we talk about so far? We said about relative prices and offering prices. And before I get started, I want to apologize for the lockdown here. Today the barbers did open, but I've not been able to get in yet, so wish me luck. Maybe I'll be able to get in by the end of the week. It's very busy. But anyway, yeah, so we left off, didn't we, looking at how societies then probably turned to grain as their go-to for trade, right? Because it was divisible. You could have like a single bit of grain, which is probably not worth really. There's probably nothing you could trade that would be worth as little as one piece of grain. And then you would have big, really valuable things that you could trade a lot of grain for, or rice. I want to go next to the third problem, right, which is what I've called wealth storage. And by that, I did touch upon it last time, where I said that, you know, if you were using rice as your go-to, and then all of that rice got like damaged, washed away, eaten by like a flock of chickens or some crazy stuff like that, you know, the value of rice would go up, right? Because as with always, supply and demand, if there's less supply relative to the same demand, the only way is the price goes up. And we're going to go into real detail on why that is in another episode. But for now, yeah, what is the problem then with that? Well, we've said it can get damaged, it can go off. It has its own utility in being that you can eat rice. As soon as you can't eat rice anymore, it's lost its utility. So now its value is in, you know, it's anchored to that, as well as it's, you know, tradable. What could we do instead then? Well, as we all know, the societies back then worked out that if they used metal, they could use them to store wealth, and that was good. Okay, brilliant. Most common one, you know, we all know about gold and silver, and these metals were probably picked for a few reasons. The main one with gold is that it's really, really unreactive as a metal. Okay, very few things react with gold, if any. You can just leave it. It doesn't oxidize like iron. You know, if you get that rust on iron, that's iron oxide. So literally what it is the oxygen in the air slowly reacts with the iron, and that's why metal gets rusty, or iron metal anyway, is because, yeah, you know, especially if you leave it in the wet, is because, yeah, the water, H2O, has a lot of oxygen in it, and the water has a lot of surface area. So when that contacts the iron, it speeds up that reaction of oxygen and iron, and you get iron oxide, the rust. So yeah, with that out the way, gold was picked probably and originally because of how good it looked. You know, we all know how good gold looks. It's shiny. It just looks valuable, right? It's got that lovely yellow color. And I guess one of the first people to discover it was probably like, yeah, I like that. It's also super rare. Okay, and this is another really important thing, is that you know, there's only so much gold in the universe, but there's certainly only so much gold on Earth. And I think as part of the research, I found that if you took all of the mined gold ever in history, you could only fill up about 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And so you melt down every bit of gold we've ever mined, 4 swimming pools. It's not a lot. You know, when you think how many people have a gold ring on, and in my head, you know, chuck in, you know, I don't know how many people are married, but like probably probably a lot of the adult population, let's just go for 1 billion people are married. So that's 1 billion gold rings, plus every other bit of jewelry, every trinket, every bit of gold leaf on an expensive chairs, but every king's crown or queen's crown, all of that, just 4 swimming pools. I think that's Olympic swimming pools. I think that's absolutely wild, and it shows you how rare it is. Now, if you're interested, I can go into a bit more detail about why it's so rare. I'll chuck that in at the end as a bit of bonus. But yeah, what were we saying? Right, so now we all agree we're going to use metal, we're going to use gold. How do we turn that metal from being just some metal in weight to money? Well, why don't we... Actually, let's not do that, because they didn't do that first, did they? No. So anyway, now we've got a place to store wealth. We can then advance society even further, okay? People now have the ability, although I think, the way that societies were even like 100 years ago, it wasn't like modern times, but what it meant was certain people who were able to store wealth and build it up were able to make big purchases and big commitments to, bigger projects, right? You have to think, right? If you can't kind of trust that you are able to actually store your money anywhere, the natural best thing to do is spend it, right? Let's pretend we use rice as money, and let's just say rice goes off after, 2 years. So if you don't spend that rice within 2 years, it's gone. So you would therefore, there would be no reason not to just spend it not as quick as you could, but pretty fast, right? Get it gone, get something for it. Switching to metal meant people could, they didn't have to do that. They could be a bit more calculated. That idea of being able to store it means that you and I today can look at something like a house and think, you know what, I could get that one day if I save my money, if I get the deposit, if I get approved for the loan, I can take a big lump sum and get the house. Or, or even a medium-sized purchase, maybe, you want a new car, or there's a car you like for like 5k, and you think, okay, maybe you can save £300 a month, and you think, yeah, okay, after about 1.5 years of saving, I'll be able to do that, and you can trust that the money you have in the bank will be there. This is kind of like what they had when they switched to metal. So yeah, pretty awesome. Obviously, none of this is financial advice. I've just got to say that, even though I don't think I've advised you, because we don't use rice as a currency. But it's worth me saying anyway, do your own research. I am just a guy with a book talking. But I hope it's been useful. So yeah, I really want you to take a moment to think about how powerful that is, to be able to actually save money and make long-term goals, and really work towards things. I think that's a huge benefit of how when they move to metals. So yeah, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, leave a like. I would really appreciate that. I'm a very small channel, and I hope I'm making some of the best content. Well, this is the best I can at the moment convey this message. I hope it's good, and if it is, please do, because other people, if you think this is good, other people probably will, and I want to get this message out there. I also promised you at the end of the video I'd tell you a bit more about why gold is rare, so if you want to stick around, if you like science, this is interesting. But if not, I'll bid you farewell. So let's, for those who have stayed, of course, let's look at that in a bit more detail. So stars like the sun run on something called nuclear fusion. Now, if you know about nuclear reactors, they run on nuclear fission at the moment, which is where they split atoms essentially. When they split certain atoms, the mass of the resultant fragmented atoms, okay, is the combined mass is less than the atom, the original atom, right? So what that means is that energy, according to Einstein's E, so energy equals mc, mass times the speed of light squared, so E equals mc squared. Yeah, so the energy released is equal to that missing mass. Okay, so that's what we use on Earth. The better version of that is what the sun does, which is fusion. So what the sun does is it runs primarily on hydrogen, and it gets so hot and there's so much pressure that the two hydrogen atoms fuse together to create a helium atom. Okay, and if you look at the periodic table, you will see that the mass of two hydrogen atoms is slightly less than one helium atom, and that lost mass comes out as the heat energy that powers the sun. You might have heard of something called a supernova, and a supernova explosion is where a huge sun, like massively bigger than our sun, finally dies, and as it dies it collapses in on itself and then explodes in this huge, absolutely massive, like light years across, crazy big explosion. Absolutely insane. It's one of the, I think it's like the biggest event on a universe scale apart from like the Big Bang. But yeah, so okay, what's all this got to do with gold then, Kyle? I mean, come on, get on with it. So what happens is, you know, I said that when the two hydrogens get fused together, they you know, the helium is slightly less in mass, so releasing energy. Well, when you fuse two helium together, it's the same thing. Then you have atomic number 4, and then two of those, and it keeps working, keeps releasing more energy. Keeps releasing more energy all the way up to iron. Now, when stars start to produce iron, what happens is fusing iron together. I think it's fusing iron, or it's the two that come before iron, but either way, it's iron ore is the anchor point. That fusion process no longer results in the release of energy. And actually the whole time, that release in energy has been what's been pushing against the huge pressures. You remember them pressures I said right at the start? That is what has been, that energy release is what's been pushing against in like an amazingly choreographed balance, really, of energy. So you got energy pushing out, the pressure's pushing in. And on another point, actually, the reason there's so much pressure is because there's so much mass in this, kind of the area of the star, the gravitational forces between all of that mass are so strong that they're compressing and it's getting super hot. So anyway, you got that balance, that energy released from the fusion is pushing out, gravity pushing in. But remember, iron, that's not releasing any energy anymore. So slowly, as more and more iron starts to build up in the core and it runs out of the hydrogens and the heliums and the other stuff, eventually there's just not enough energy to keep this going. So it collapses. In that moment of collapse though, there's so much pressure, and I mean so much, and it's so hot that you create things like gold, like the bigger atoms, gold, uraniums, you know, your huge complex atoms, and it goes like that. That's crazy, it's ridiculous, but yeah, it does, it goes like blasts out, and that's where you get your gold. So that is why the bigger elements are so rare, is because they're only made, actually I think neutron stars can do them, but yeah, and actually any physics people, if you know other places where this happens, like neutron stars or other galactic events, I'd be really interested to find out more, but I think this is the most common case. So yeah, that's it. It's a rare event in only the biggest stars that can fuse up to iron, that collapse into supernovae. And there you go. So the gold really was born in a star. On that note, thank you very much and good night. Cheers.